In everybody's life, there are some turning points. Moments when we need to change course or face the consequences. Live life the way we always suspected we wouldn't be allowed to, or at least that nobody might approve of. For Deirdre Abrami, a sixth generation psychic intuitive on her father's side, who grew up in a home where psychic was a dirty word, that journey began with a near fatal brain aneurysm that she was diagnosed with just days after giving birth to her second child. She was told she had probably 30 days to live, and she was faced with the very real possibility of leaving both children behind. So she realized she had no choice but to stop hiding from the truth she had always known about herself. And thank goodness she did. The now proud psychic intuitive is helping people with everything from answers on love and life to training on how to tap into their own knowing and finally get themselves on the path they really want to be walking. On today's podcast, we are talking about the experience of a cerebral aneurysm, the corporate career that she left behind, the angels she always saw even as a child, and what in the world it is like to date when you're psychic. You will not be disappointed by this one. Tell me about your aneurysm and how it changed your life.
Yes. Well, I call it a blessing because I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if I didn't have it. Actually, funny enough, it's on my son's birthday is when I found out about it. And his birthday is in 2 days. And so in 2 days, it'll be 22 years since I had the diagnosis, or that we noticed it was an issue. 22 years ago, I delivered my son, very easy birth. But I had this throbbing headache that the doctors at the time just thought I had an epidural, they thought it was a side effect. And long story short, they let me go home because it was my second child. You know how it is when you have two, like by number two child, like you have the baby and then they're like, okay, get out now. We need your bed. Right. They don't give you any time.
Because no big deal, right? You just created a human and pushed it out, but okay. Yeah, sure.
Right. Exactly. So what happened was I went home and this headache was it's one thing if it's your foot, your fingers, but when it's your head, you can't concentrate. And I'm trying to breastfeed. By the way, I have a 14-month at home also. So all of a sudden I couldn't move. And long story short, I did go back to that same hospital. Now they did a CAT scan that led to you have a brain aneurysm. So they did a lot of examining and it was a little scary because I didn't know what to expect. And I'm not going to lie, but these neurologists, these doctors that they came in like salesmen. I had a neurologist, an angiogram. I mean, they were four different kind of doctors. One's like, I'm going to go through your skull. The other one's, I'm going to do an angio. They were all trying to sell me on a procedure. And I'm like, and one thing for sure is that I learned when I'm not sure, don't say anything yet. And I had this gut feeling that was like, don't make any decision yet. And then I have to say, I do come from a line of 6th generation psychics, but I'll be honest, I ignored my intuition my whole life. Actually, I was embarrassed of my psychic family. I used to hide from it. I was kind of like I was a psychic closet type person. So here I am with 2 babies and my psychic grandma came and visited me in the hospital and said this to me. She's like, just as they were getting ready to push me in to get an angiogram, then if don't know what that's about, it's a little scary at first because you're strapped to a board and they tell you if you even sneeze or cough, you're dying instantly if you do that during the procedure. So here I am like strapped in and they're getting ready to push me. And my grandmother is like 4 foot nothing. And she gets in my face with her finger and says, hey, you need to snap out of this because you want somebody else raising your 2 children. It's time to use that damn intuition of yours. Think about that while you're in there. And then she leaves. And I'm like, okay.
Grandmas and grandma figures are just the queen of the mic drop.
Yeah.
So then what?
So then I go in and it is a little interesting because they have to keep you partially awake because when they go from the neck into the brain, you have to hold your breath and it's a weird sensation. And as I'm there, I have to say, I felt this, believe it or not, I felt this presence of love and safety. And most people would probably be like scared crap. And I have to be honest. I don't know if ignorance is bliss or if I just had a knowingness that I was going to be fine. Long story short, unfortunately, the kind of aneurysm I had, they weren't able to do the procedure they wanted to. I live in Florida and I'm originally from New York. And with my family contacts, they were not wanting me to stay in Florida medical care. So they were flying me to New York without saying
My
anything.
family would do the same thing, but also we're Indian, so like we know 9,000 doctors in New York, so it would be
And my mom, yes, she was in charge of a town in New York, and so she got the best of the best. And next thing you know, I'm seeing a doctor in Manhattan,
okay.
who was a neighbor on Fire Island of ours. So during this phase, like now I had to wait because I couldn't travel yet. By the way, I had double vision. Here I am with 2 babies. It was mayhem, I'm not going to lie. And at this stage, leading up to it, my psychic aunt comes to stay with me. And again, nobody knows I come from a psychic family. So it's like under the QTs. We were part of a church back then. And so they were very sweet that these families would come with dishes because they heard that I had a brain aneurysm and I couldn't drive because I couldn't see. And so they were bringing dishes. But every time they knocked on the door with a dish, my psychic aunt would answer the door and she would start reading them. She's a medium, so she sees dead people. So here I am going, quiet.
This is the theme that I'm getting from what I've heard of your story is that I had a similar experience giving birth to my second child in the pandemic, and it completely changed my life because I thought I was going to die in lockdown, and it was horrific.
Oh my goodness.
There is something about the experience of bringing life into the world that makes it impossible to deny things about yourself. The fact that for you, it triggered the aneurysm, triggered that knowledge and got you to admit something that on your inside you already knew. It seems like a story I'm hearing again and again. And whether what the person needs to admit is that they've got a gift or what they have to admit is that they've got to change their life or whatever it is, there is something about that moment because there is life before and after motherhood, and you'll never be the same, right? So for context, your mother's side was not psychic, your father's side was, and you grew up not wanting to admit it?
Exactly.
Why?
Yes. Well, the main reason was, believe it or not, I was curious. And because since I was 5, I recall flying in the house and visiting people.
Physically flying.
Physically flying.
And your parents were just like, there she goes. Don't knock into that.
I mean,
or don't knock over the pillar.
Spiritually, not physically. I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not physically. Sorry, spiritually speaking. Now, by the way, every time we go to sleep, our spirit leaves the body. But I recalled it. When you're young, you're pretty wide open and recall things like that. As we get older, we have egos in which we then doubt ourselves and don't want to tell anybody. And we kind of shut that part of us off. And so, so I remember that. And my mom, and I do kind of remember looking out a window, but my mom said, she'd be like, and she was trying to be really upbeat about it because she had no idea. She thought it was interesting. She wasn't scared of it. She had no opinion of it. She didn't try to do it herself. It was more, okay, that's interesting. But she already knew from my father's crazy sisters and parents and great grandparents. We would go to these annual parties, and it was crazy because one would be like doing mediumship in one room, the other one be doing like remote viewing, hands-on healing, bending spoons. It was crazy.
Very different than my childhood parties. You got one room where the women are gossiping about the men, one room where people are playing cards, one room where people are drinking whiskey, and those are the rooms. Yeah.
Well, I think they probably had the gossiping too.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was some whiskey or wine, whatever. Everybody has their own thing.
Yeah. So when you had this moment in the hospital, I guess I should say, when your grandmother comes to you and tells you this, do you feel relief? Do you feel fear?
I felt confused, but I will tell you this. A crucial piece as being a mom is you become a tiger with her cubs. And that really also, because when she said to me, do you want somebody else raising your children? You got to snap out of this. That all of a sudden was one thing when it was me, but when she mentioned my children, it was like, I got to snap out of this.
Yeah, hard no. Mm-hmm.
And I, and having that flash of who would raise them and what would happen to them. And that really was my catapulted me to healing was my 2 kids. Absolutely.
Our kids will never understand how much they save us. It doesn't come up that often on my podcasts, but I think about it a lot. I started an email account for my son when he was 6 months old, and I've been emailing him ever since. And then I started one for my daughter when she was in my belly. And so they both have email accounts that maybe I email them once every 6 months or something. But basically thoughts as they grow, the stuff I wish I could tell them now, but they don't understand it yet. Part of, I think, what I'm trying to get at is how much of a blessing they've been in ways I would love for them to really understand, So I get it, is my point.
They will. They will. And think about our parents giving us guidance, and it goes generations to generations. And how old are your children?
5 and almost 10. So they're itty
Aw.
bitty. They're tiny. They still kind
10
of
is
like me.
starting to understand. 10 is starting to understand. 5 is so delicious still.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So tell me the process by which you decided to finally tap into what you knew you had.
Well, first of all of us are born with intuition. It's not because I come from 6th generation of intuitives. It's not like that at all. We're all born with it. And you can avoid a brain aneurysm to have your awakening. All you need to do is reconnect with it. And this is something I've been working on for years that I'm actually going to be launching soon, where there's there's a step ladder to really going from reconnecting. Because by the way, you didn't lose it. It never left you. It's just reigniting it. It's awakening it. That's all it is. And then there's processes. So the first step again is to just have the reveal of, okay, I'm reconnecting my intuition. Second step is now I got to heal because I probably have some blocks around. Like me, the main reason I also did not want to connect with my intuition when I was young is because my father, when we used to go to his relative's house, would put a lot of shame around it. He said, because he became a born again later on in life. So he said, if you listen to my aunts and grandpa, you're going to burn in hell. And he put a lot of scare tactics. So here I am, a little girl feeling like them. And my great grandmother saying, oh my goodness, she's one of us, pointing to me, how intuitive. And that's my life mission. So it was very positive. And the next thing my father comes up and says, don't talk to them. They're crazy. You're going to burn in hell if you follow them. So here I am, very conflicted. So I shut it all down. Is really what happened.
It's crazy because what you're describing is just a family dynamic, right? Every family has their family dynamic. They just don't usually have abilities, these types of psychic and mediumship abilities. Anybody you ask about their childhood is going to say, there's a piece that I shut down. There's a piece that I made smaller or denied, whether it's their sexuality, whatever it is, right? In service to whatever their family told them would give them the best possible life. Mm-hmm. And then later on in life, maybe they make some sort of a change. Great. But it seems like with psychic abilities, it can literally explode you from the inside out if you don't admit what it is. And the reason I say that is that I interviewed someone about a year ago on the podcast known as Mama Medium, and she had a TV show on TLC. She's the first person that told me psychic ability is hereditary. She's like, it's like diabetes, like it can run in your family. And she talked a little bit about how at some point she kind of had to admit to herself that she knew all of these crazy things that were going to happen. And it wasn't until she hit her own crisis moment that she finally had to admit it. And part of that was unraveling the family piece of her mom was jealous of how strong her powers were. So, but that just becomes a family dynamic. That's not about psychic stuff.
And I will verify my father, I was told, was jealous of my abilities and stuff. So you're probably spot on. Absolutely. Amazing. It is sad, right?
And then, and then when you finally admit it, kind of world's wide open. Right?
It did. And I do feel that before we're even born, we map out our own, Akashic records. We'll call it Bickle life when we're going to have our awakenings, different times for our awakenings. And so that's my son's job was to come and awake me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I do believe in that because I'm Hindu, but even just forget religion. I think energetically, if we are all energy, how would it make any sense that our soul or whatever light inside of us didn't have some sort of say in what's coming? It's not like we have one lesson to learn. So on some level, it makes sense, the idea that, Hindus, for example, believe you choose your parents.
I agree with that too. I have the same philosophy.
Which means some of the pain that's coming. Right?
You sign up for it.
7 lifetimes. You literally sign up for it.
You sign up for it. I believe the same thing. I believe we sign up for it. And there's a reason is because Earth is hard. and we come to fulfill karma. We have to have in our soul group. There's a lot of things that go on with that, why we come back. And yes, we absolutely pick. That's why I always tease my kids since they were small is you picked me. So
right. Not my fault you made a bad deal. You picked me.
Yeah, you could have picked somebody else,
It also helps me kind of in the concept of divorce because I see all these people walking around very, very overwhelmed by their divorce. And for me, it kind of feels like this has to have happened for a reason, because if I didn't have that marriage, I wouldn't have these kids. And on some level, whatever my soul owes them is a lot louder than anything else.
I feel that was a contract before we were even born. And if you look at every ex or any person that whoever feels they did wrong to them, you call them your teacher. That can transmute the energy like this, because how do we really know? Nobody, we're born, nobody hands us a manual. It's trial and error is really what it's at. I've been focusing, because the clients pick me, is love. And they all say, they're constantly saying, well, he or she did this to me. And they go on and on. And I say, well, did you ever think you also chose them? And this is if you just take it like, thank you so much, whoever they are, for helping me elevate and catapult me into a whole new way of living, thinking, being. That they just gave you a PhD in education there.
If you decide to use it, especially in the modern world, like phase one, you're just trying to figure out how to work within the system, right? How do I get chosen? How do I get educated? How do I get money? How do I survive? How do I whatever? And then it seems like there's this moment where you realize that in the process of figuring out your survival, you had to also learn how to numb yourself. And so like you were numbing yourself to the kind of desire to lean into who you really were. And you say psychic was a curse word in your nuclear family, but you had plenty of psychic extended family, Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about why your father distrusted these abilities. How did you develop it? Did you have extended family that could help you develop it, or did you have to go down your own path?
It was funny because even though at like holiday parties or gatherings, even though they all had their because they were all different. I had an aunt who shows very strong medium from Long Island. Yes, even the Long Island medium, she trained her. She was, part of that clique.
I'm from Strong Island.
Aunt who did tarot, to my great grandmother, who actually, believe it or not, was arrested for a week by the CIA because she had a dream about Churchill and Roosevelt being out to sea and talking about all these different treaties, and they thought she was a spy because that was back in the day. So, my family was kind of known in Long Island as psychics.
And how could she have known? Yeah.
So, but again, I really didn't see them that often, that group of family. We spent more time with my mother's conservative family. They were more like the Leave It to Beaver Cleaver with the white picket fence and, that was more my mom's family. Now, with that said, I always knew I had a gut feeling and I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't your normal girl growing up, because most little girls probably want a Barbie doll, right? Yeah, not me. I always wanted books on UFOs. And I would, or if you saved up your money, and I bought like books. Now that I think about it, Easter Islands, Edgar Cayce. What kid does that? I was obsessed with Stephen King.
A kid who sees things, right? A kid who sees things.
Yes. So,
but you were never scared as a child?
Wasn't. No, where I live in Florida, we don't have basements, but in New York, we had a basement. All the kids were playing and the lights went out and all the kids went upstairs and started screaming. And I was the only kid who was like, it's fine.
It's like hanging out in the basement.
I was like, what? Why is everybody screamed, ran out of the basement. Here I am sitting there like, is the lights going back on? What's going on? And all the other kids, they're like, we couldn't believe it. They're all looking downstairs like, oh, and also when I was in high school, I'm still friends with them today. My best buddies from high school. The girls, they would call me Weirdra instead of Deirdre, because I did start to like be a little more confident with things flying out of my mouth. For instance, like my friends would be like, oh, look at that cute couple. And it would fly out of my mouth. Oh, he's really dating somebody else and whatever. Sure enough, the next day, guess what? My prediction happened. And they're like, how did you know that? But they didn't really know that I came from a psychic family until I got married. I had a big wedding party and here comes, getting their hair and makeup done. And all of a sudden, my aunt, who's a medium, walks in and she starts reading all the girls in the bridal party. I was like, no. She even predicted one was having an affair. She's not marrying that guy. But anyway, and we all were like, what? And you had to see her face. She was bright red, one of my bridesmaids. Yes. So they didn't even know. I hid it. I really hid it for years. I was not proud because I wasn't confident enough until now to like own up to it. to dim my light for everybody else. I'm sure you probably understand this too.
We want to fit in.
We want to fit in. I wanted to be the cool girl, the girl that blended. I didn't want to be front and center. And it was always like when the light's on me, I would freeze. And it's something when you turn 50 that you just go, F whatever, who cares? There's something about that you finally own up. Hopefully anybody watching, if you're younger than 50, you get into it before then. But there's something when you finally are just like, you know what? I don't care what anybody says.
I think they call that perimenopause, but that's just me. I'm 47 and things are very different than they used to be for me. I will say that for sure.
Right.
But you talk about like not wanting to show yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had talked a little bit about my awakening to the fact that I've kind of stood left of the spotlight in my life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of women can relate to that because we may not be people who externally you would think would ever be described as stepping left of the light. But I can think of making keynote speeches and then not going to that event afterwards where I would have met the people that would have taken me to the next level. You know what I mean? I wrote the book. I didn't insist on the TV interview. I didn't there were these moments, right? For me, I know it comes from a type of humility that my family values, that there's almost too much pride in humility to the extent that if you even talk about it, you're bragging. So I'm one of those people who says, where'd you go to college? Boston. Where in Boston? Cambridge. Where in Cambridge? Harvard. You have to ask me 3 times to get me to say the thing because the undertone of my life has been, if you're too proud of it, it's obnoxious.
Do you ever hear of the funny story about the turkey that both ends are cut off? Do you ever hear that one with the oven?
No.
Because, okay. So there was a scene where the grandma was putting her turkey into an oven and her grandson said, Grandma, no, I'm sorry. The boy said to the mother, "What, Mom, why do you cut off both ends of the turkey? I've never seen that before." And the mother said, "I'm not sure. Go ask Grandma." So he goes to Grandma, "Grandma, why do you cut off both ends of the turkey before you put it in the oven?" She's like, "I don't know. You should go ask Great Grandma." So he goes to Great Grandma. "Why do you cut off both sides of the turkey?" And she said, "Well, because my oven was too short." And so what happens is we have to be very careful how we have belief systems and thoughts around antiquated storylines that have nothing to do with us. It happens with a lot of generations, especially generations that immigrated to America or whatever country, and there was devastation. And I know a lot of cultures, including mine, my father's family, they're all from Spain and had a escape from the country and you hear about that, but there's still a lot of thoughts of why, you think about, I bet if you start digging a little deeper, of why your family's like that, I bet it has something to do with that. To really dig a little deeper, like with the turkeys and story.
Well, and it's beautiful because basically what you're describing is like a perfect illustration of generational trauma and how it hurts people without any intention, right? They're wasting perfectly good turkey is the point. They're wasting perfectly. Like somebody could have had a couple of extra bites of turkey, and I could have started this podcast 15 years earlier, and you could have accepted your gift when you were in your teens. And you know what I mean? It's just, it's wild how this stuff.
But I'll tell you why we weren't supposed to.
Why?
Because we wouldn't be here talking to each other on a podcast right now.
Well, that's true. And this is lovely. Right?
And everything I really feel is the perfect timing. When we feel stuck, it's actually our intuition saying, there's something off. You're out of alignment with your mind, body, and soul. Are you listening here? So no, the worst thing to ever do, because I've done it. I've lived it. Yeah. That's why I can teach it, is to go back to the past, even to yesterday, because it's done. What can you do? But if we turn that into actually saying, thank you, teacher, whatever, whoever, what situation, and transmute that, then look at how many people you're going to help.
Yeah, if you can. When you went into your ability, what was your goal?
My goal was to heal because I was a young mom with 2 children. It was a journey. And that was every minute of it. So really one thing led to another. Like for me, I heard a voice one day because I can't see, I can't drive, and I have 2 babies. And so I hear a voice that says, go to a bookstore and go there and get a book on talking to, spirits. And I'm like, okay. And it was nagging me. So I go to the bookstore, and I'll be honest, here was me at the bookstore. Am I going to run into a neighbor? God forbid I run into a neighbor. So I remember asking the employee in the bookstore, Psst, where's the metaphysical section?
Right.
And they're like, upstairs.
She's thinking you're going to ask for dirty books. She's thinking you're going to go,
oh,
where's the whatever? And instead you're like, metaphysical.
Oh, definite. I was like looking around. I probably had a cap on.
We hide our growth. We do. You launch a podcast, you put it up on Instagram, and you do trial reels so that they're not shown to anybody who already knows you, right? Everybody's hiding. Why is everybody hiding?
Because you know what, I could tell you now, because I've like let it going of all of the onion here, the layers of the onion. There was a couple of reasons. It wasn't just my father's voice, and then there was family that were critical and constantly criticizing and constantly. And these are people that aren't necessarily diagnosed with narcissism, but the critical voice, I know, like for me personally, held me back until recently when, like Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, when you finally realize their opinion doesn't mean crap to me. But it takes you a while to get to that place, especially if they're a family, right? Store. So I go to the bookstore, and literally this bookstore has hundreds of books in the metaphysical state area. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I yelled at God, source, whoever you believe in. I said, if you want me doing this kind of work, like everybody says, you got to show me something. And a second later, I heard boom, and I turn around and there's a book on the floor. And I'm like, no way. And I go and pick it up, and it's a book on angels. And so I picked up the book, and it said Healing with Your Angels by Doreen Virtue. But anyway, I looked at who the author was because I do come from a corporate background, and I worked in corporate. And I have to say, as much as I come from a family of gypsies, if you truly look up the word gypsy and like the encyclopedia, probably all my aunt's faces would be there. Big hair, their big personalities, definitely the gypsy.
You took a different path, college, corporate job, all that. You got married, you had 2 kids. So you look at this book and you're probably being very critical.
Well, at first I was, but what caught my eye to buy it was because when I saw she was a psychiatrist that had a near death. I'm like, okay, this sounds similar to my story. She was educated. I know it sounds silly, but that's what drew me in. And then I closed, and I said, I did a little prayer in my head. I asked a question. I said, if this book's for me, prove it to me. So then I opened up a page and I lock eyes with answered one first question, close the book. I did it 3 times. You would think after once I'd buy the book. Nope, 3 times. So I bought the book. I read it literally with 2 babies at home. If anybody had 2 babies back to back, you don't even have time to go to the bathroom by yourself. Right. I read that book. And then once I got that book, I started to connect with angels, and I started to see like numbers and signs like 1111. That's when it really started for me to open me up. Was the communication around angel numbers and feathers, seeing feathers out of nowhere and coins everywhere. And this book told you about seeing angel signs. So then once I started reading it, it was like, boom, that was my first initial, but I still had the aneurysm then. So a couple of weeks go by, and then all of a sudden at night, at like when everybody was asleep, including my husband, I would go take a long hot shower and just be like,
Same here,
hit my back. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice, and it started to talk to me. And I'm like, am I hearing this? But it felt so beautiful and calming. And then all of a sudden I saw this laser beam go from heaven into my brain. The next scene was they showed me an MRI report on like when the doctors would show me the brain aneurysm. And they showed me all of a sudden that white beam turned into like a pencil eraser, and it started to erase the aneurysm out of my brain. And I'm like, okay. I was like, all right. And every night I looked forward to this. It felt just like a warm hug and love. I can't explain it. I actually had about 12 MRIs and MRIs at this point. So 21 days go by with this looking forward every night to this voice and healing. I didn't tell a soul. Not one person I told.
Well, I was going to say, did your husband know what you were thinking?
No, only a couple of times. Well, my aunt was staying there, so she was always talking. But then also I started to have very vivid dreams by now. I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I had a notebook on my side table, and I would write all what I got in my dreams. And then the next day I would share it with him. And he's a very conservative guy and said, don't tell a soul.
Keep it to yourself. He's like, Deirdre,
don't tell anybody. And one by one, because I showed them with the paper, one by one, friends would start telling us about a crisis. It was in my book. So he was like, burn the book.
Burn the book. But did he know when you got married? Did he know this about you? Did you say, by the way, when I was a kid, I went to this summer camp and also I see dead people? Did you, but like, no biggie, I'm
No.
not gonna do anything
And to be
about it?
honest, we're divorced. And the main reason for the divorce, it kind of catapulted, is because the main reason is he did not, in his mind, marry a psychic. Yes.
Well,
So
we
my
all
whole
tell
life
people.
changed. We did try to save the marriage, but when we had group therapy, we had couples therapy, the therapist said people who go through like a near death experience, they look at life much different. They never look at it the same. I was a different person when I married him. Now that I tasted death, I had 30 days to live. And now I was given a second chance. You don't really care about the car that the neighbor drives or
Yeah.
the house or looking a certain way. It was a little materialistic, the life I was living. And that was really, I was dying inside. I didn't want to have that fake persona anymore. I live in was a wealthy area called Boca Raton, Florida. It was not me. And although he's not like that kind of a person, but there were certain rules we were playing in this that were set up prior to getting married. We were both corporate people, had the savings, we had a plan. And
You
now
had a shared vision for what life was going to look like. And when things change, that's when you find out if you really have a life partner, frankly. Right?
correct. And that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
I kind of knew, let me just say that before we got married, I probably shouldn't have. But again, like you, I have two beautiful kids. There's nothing bad to say. It was two to tango, you know?
Same girl, same.
Yeah. So
And my
learn.
couple therapist said something similar to us, which was very few couples survive a severe, severe physical ailment or surgery where one person feels like the other person hasn't processed it the way that they did. It's not even about showing up and saying, well, I'll clean the sheets, I'll bandage you, I'll clean up the vomit, I'll help you with your needle for your whatever. It's more, this fundamentally changes me. Do you really see me? Because if they don't, you really can't lie to yourself anymore. And you got to just say, peace be with you.
So interesting you said that. It only came up recently for me in the last couple of years, because I've been divorced a while now, is that was one of the main reasons when I was diagnosed and couldn't drive, and because we all had like duties in the house and I could not perform them because now I don't have vision. I have an aneurysm. I can't even barely eat. I went down to 100 pounds soaking wet after delivering a baby.
Oh my God. I was like
And he
600
was
pounds
very
after I delivered my
angry
babies.
about that. Well,
Babies. But he was angry about it.
yeah. I mean, now we're friends. Like next week, we're celebrating my son's graduation. So everything's good now. But back then, I think I was numbed out, fight or flight for so long that only recently, probably during an interview again, that all of a sudden I wondered why I had such resentment. And you're right, because that's how you know if your person's your person when you're down and out. And if that person is not there for you or you're not there for your person, either way,
you're not each other's person.
right.
And the other thing about divorce that people don't understand until they go through it is sometimes people think you're dwelling. People think if you have a memory or a resentment or something that bubbles up, it means you're holding on. But what it often means is it takes time to process what really happened and where you really were. And the numbing it takes to try to stay in a marriage that's not working for a really long time makes you ignore things that later in life will come up. I remember very, very clearly, going out on a date maybe a year after my divorce. He goes to the bathroom in the restaurant. While he's at the bathroom, somebody dropped a glass. A waiter dropped a glass, and the glass shattered everywhere, and the glass flew everywhere, and it fell relatively near where I was sitting. He comes back to the table, and he says, "What happened?" Like everybody's startled. And I said, "Oh, somebody dropped the glass." And I said, "But I'm fine," right? Like meaning the glass flew everywhere. This man who didn't know my last name comes over and is like very concerned, checking my hair, checking if there's glass on my plate, checking if there was a shard somewhere. And I went home that day and I cried. And I thought, I have forgotten what it's like to be treated with the care that any one of my girlfriends would have shown me if a glass broke near me, right?
Right.
So these things that bubble up later, people don't understand. It's because the numbness made you ignore so much. And then you have a moment of pause thinking, I really did that to myself. Right? like I allowed it or I ignored it or I whatever. So it's powerful stuff.
I agree 1,000%. And I don't think when it bubbles up, especially years later, I think it's because maybe you're finally ready to heal it, work through it, is
Yeah.
my gut.
That too.
Especially if you've been like, because I find a lot of people I work with, my clients, especially, they keep themselves busy going in circles. That's because they don't really want to work on themselves. So if I'm busy over here or busy over here, I don't have to pay attention to me.
Yeah. No, it's much more fun to go out to a party or, I don't know, date everybody in Manhattan, for example. But back to you. So, is there any part of your ability that was truly new to you after you finally accepted it and admitted it?
No, there was nothing that magnified for me. However, I think because there was some shame around it and I quickly shut it down. And it's survival. And I have 2 kids. All of a sudden, you become the tiger. Like if somebody, Louise Hay, said you better do affirmations every day, I did affirmations every day.
Depends on, yeah.
If I went to the doctor and they said go vegan, I went vegan. I mean, I was like determined.
So crazy.
Because I hid it for all these years. Funny enough, I had trouble using the word psychic only until about a year ago.
Really?
Yes. It was like my grandma said it was like the F word in our family. She wouldn't even say the word psychic. Wow. She called herself a metaphysician. She was well traveled and she was a spitfire. But yes, even see again, but that's like we go back to the turkey with both ends cut off. Just because somebody generationally chose not to like that word psychic and it was passed down, don't use it. Yeah. And even still today, people get freaked out. I will tell another funny story because now that I think about it, how cultures could be so freaked out with the word psychic. So I was getting my master's about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And my intuition said, stop and get gas before I was taking night classes for marriage and family counseling. I thought I wanted to be a therapist. Anyway, so I had a big truck, the family truck, and I heard, get gas before you go to night class. Of course I didn't listen. So I half hour away from my house. I get on the highway and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm on E. I'm a half an hour from home. What am I going to do? So I had to pull off the quickest way to get off. And I found a dark gas station and my gut sinks. My stomach is like turning. And I'm like, it's like one of those crime movies. You can hear almost the music in the background, like something's getting ready to happen.
That's what I pictured.
Of course, I still didn't listen. So I pull up. It's a little, it's dark and it's not a bad area. And so I start pumping. And a man about 28-ish came from my backside because here I am pumping the gas this way. And he comes from like over here. The gas thing is here. And he comes from over here and says, I just got out of jail and I don't want to go back. And he's like holding his pocket like he's got a gun in his pocket. Well, let me tell you what happened next. I don't know where I went. I kind of checked out and I heard Archangel Michael's voice as clear as day, and he told me what to say to this guy. And I started to say to him, I can't even explain it. I was like calm. I didn't scream, nothing. A presence came over me and I just started, because I kind of came and went. So I don't remember everything other than starting to say, like, your grandmother says you were supposed to be doing this and that with your life. All of a sudden, this kid starts backing up. You're a witch. You're a Wiccan. And he starts backing up. And I don't even know. I'm just like channeling. Like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm very calm. And I hear, give him $20. I'm like, okay. I go into the car while he's still standing there like shocked. And I get $20 out of my wallet. He didn't even try to, now that I think about it later, how stupid I was. But anyway, because I was they said he needed the $20 and he'll change his life. Okay. I hand him the 20. I said, this is a gift from God. I don't even know what he said. And you need to change your life, be a coach. I saw him going back to school. Anyway, so then I get back in my car and I start driving home and I go, what the heck just happened? That guy took off. He grabbed the money and he ran so fast like I had a rifle in my hand. So think about his ancestors. I think he was probably from the islands and they really believe in voodoo and all this stuff. So I think that was my gut, which worked for my favor, because once I started saying things and I was very calm, that kid I'll never forget. He's like, you're a witch. You're a Wiccan.
You're like, I'll be whatever you want me to be. Just back up. Okay. I'll be a witch. I'll be a sorcerer, whatever.
Yeah. And, so I always hope that someday he's going to see me talking about him and come to me and say he changed his life. I don't know. Hopeful.
I would love to know what he did with that $20. Yeah. I would love to know exactly if we could find him, what happens after you
drive. Yeah, it was in Fort Lauderdale. I was going to Nova Southeastern. So if that was you,
Yeah.
Reach
Yeah.
out.
What year? Tell me what year, and then
I
we'll
have to look it up. I'll have to put it. Yeah, I have to look up what year.
we're putting it out
We're
there.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my gosh. So, okay, your gift has saved you. Your gift has comforted you. Your gift has woken you up. Your gift has led you to meet lovely people like me. What is the most frustrating part of the gift for you?
you got an hour?
Yeah.
Well, you know how, like you said, you're in New York and having the best part of your life dating. Well,
Oh,
picture
it's
being me when I was single
oh,
dating.
I didn't even think about that. Oh my God. It did not occur to me how complicated it would be dating and being psychic. It's hard enough for me dating, being able to read people. I had a date 2 nights ago. I had a really nice time with him. And the minute he mentioned his ex wife, his energy changed in a way where I felt such contempt from him towards her. He didn't say anything negative, but I felt it and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta
See,
go.
that's your intuition going, warning, warning.
He's not a gentle man. He was very gentle with me, but he's not a gentleman. I could feel it, right?
Well, then he was putting on a mask, as they say, on his best behavior.
But I cannot fathom what you have been through. So can you tell me a juicy story?
Okay. One of them was I was on Facebook, wasn't even on a dating app. And this man private messaged me and said, hey, I see you're intuitive. I'd like to book a call with you. Okay, great. What's your number? And I'd like to ask you some questions before I book. Okay, fine. I mean, back in the day, that was what I did. So he called me and he starts asking me, so what's your process? That legit, right? Then he stops and he goes, all right, I'm just going to tell you, I think you're hot and I want to take you out. And now all of a sudden I see him psychically with a blonde. And I see she's got a wedding ring on. And they show me next that she's got a wedding dress on. And I said, I forgot the guy's name. But anyway, I was like, so who's the blonde? Joking. I didn't care because I wasn't interested in the guy.
Right.
So I was like, who's the blonde? And he's like, you're going to crack up. He's like, shit, you could see that?
No. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. And can you please start a service where I can have like 5 minutes of your time every once in a while and I can FaceTime someone and then put you so you can see him. And then you can just be like, gotcha. You know, that's not your real name.
Yet, that's a good class that I could teach to everybody. I think we're onto something here.
That would be the best.
The woman's superpower. Men too, because I have 30% men who come to me and they're the ones just, that are dating.
But I'm not so worried about them being unalived. I'm not so worried about, all of that. So I'm more worried about us. So have you ever been talking to someone and like in your actual life, whether it's dating or otherwise, and you just know they're lying, but the actual detail? And then what do you do in that situation?
So I will admit there was one guy I dated years ago. Oh, and it's 111, by the way, by me. Anyway, so I was dating a man, not going to say his name, and I got he had a wandering eye. We'll keep it PG.
Okay.
And I don't mind telling. And all of a sudden, I psychically hear it's on his phone. You'll get all the proof. And I'm like, no, Deirdre, stop it. We're traveling, we're having fun together. And I keep getting this vision while I'm sleeping that he's not faithful. Like he was telling me he wanted to be. And so it was 2 a.m. I get the code to his phone psychically. And I'm like, no, that must be just Deirdre making up stuff. Because, hey, as much as we're psychic, we're humans, right? So it was nagging at me. So I said, all right, let me see how psychic I am. I go quietly and I get the phone and I go hide in the bathroom and I do the code and it freaking opens his phone. And I'm like,
you
deer in
surprised yourself. Right? Like you surprised yourself.
Because
it's one thing to have a feeling.
I'm intuitive.
Yeah.
I'm like more of a coach type person. I'm not one to get a name out of nowhere and give you a social security number type psychic, but I'm good with emotions and all that stuff. Anyway, so now I'm in his phone. I'm like, do I, don't I? And I
mean, you have to. Come on. Like for America. Yeah. Come on. For me, you had to. Yeah.
So then I go immediately to his text message and there's nothing. See, Deirdre, but why was I getting woken up in the middle of the night to look at his phone? I hear, go look at the delete area, delete files. And I went,
scared.
Huh? There's such a thing? And all of a sudden, all the proof. And my goodness. So yeah, needless to say, yeah. I just said, okay, goodbye. No, thank you. He probably, now he'll know if he watches this video how I figured it out.
Now he'll know. I was going to say, I assumed you came out of the bathroom when, No,
I quietly put the phone back and I said, okay. And I just said, I'm done, but not to him. I was like, done. And I was in another state. I had to fly home and all that, but it was good because I was like, thank you, God. I wasn't married to him or anything. It was just a pass through type of guy I was dating. But
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened. And I have this clever thing that I learned that when you write, if you want to tap into somebody else and spy on them, so anybody out there looking to date, this is what I suggest you do. And I just
Okay,
came
I'm
up with
writing
this
it
by
down. I'm
accident.
writing it down.
Get a piece of paper. Anybody can do this. I taught a girl 2 days ago, actually, a client of mine to do this. So what you do on paper, I'll ask for the person's only first name. I don't need their date of birth and all that. I will ask for their sign just to see. It's more their sign to see when I start getting hits on the person that I know it's kind of an alignment. But so I write their name down. Then I'll write the person. Let's say I'm going to read for you. And you ask me about a specific person. I'll write your name, your sign. I'll write their name, their sign. And then I tell you, we've done a meditation first, and then I start staring at their name. While I'm staring, I'll ask, how do you feel about so-and-so? Or if there's a specific question. And I wait for a second, and then boom, they start talking to me. It's the coolest thing. I came about this by accident where I can tell I pick up the way, and I always tell my clients, this is going to be their perspective. It may not be yours because it's their higher self talking to me. So that's what you can do. If you could do that for yourself, like even because a lot of times the only reason a lot of people complain they can't read for themselves is because our ego gets in the way. So what you could do is kind of take yourself out of it, write your own name down and talk to your higher self and say, what does Deirdre have to know? And then that helps you kind of get more accurate information.
I'd like to believe that I have some control over what's going to happen in my future or some ability to at least see something coming this time around. But that was why I was curious as to the other side of it. And I thought you were going to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to say, what's frustrating about it is when I can't get an answer to something I really want an answer about. For yourself or the people you love, maybe,
Well, there was one time that was pretty significant. And this was in the early stages of me developing my intuition and all of that suddenly a brother-in-law was murdered in Orlando. And it was a very high profile event. The way it happened, it was all over the news. And I'm like, universe, God, what happened here? My aunt's living with me. My grandma's visiting. Well, how come not one of us got a warning? Like, why not?
But you hear that a lot where people with psychic ability will say they don't get bad news unless something they can prevent. I hear that.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
My last piece is really, what would you do differently?
I would listen to my intuition and embrace it. It's available to you 24/7. It's from source, God, whoever you believe in, and not to let anybody else dim your light. We don't realize that when people say something, I don't know why I'm getting the word sarcastic or hurtful or bully, it's because they are. And once you realize that that's their perspective and let them have their perspective. So again, if I could help anybody listening out there, that if I could rewind the clock, although I wouldn't be here right now, is I would have embraced my intuition much sooner. Because first of all, if you're a student, it's a good way to cheat. If not really, and that's another story. If you're looking for love, your guides tell you 99% of the readings I do in love life, it comes up that when somebody calls me crying about a person, an ex, I say to them, your spirit team gave you the red flags. You decided to ignore them. Your health, listen to your health. It's, again, your guidance system of what's going on. So your intuition is the step one of healing all parts of you. And listening to your intuition, you will be able to then clear out all the debris and then manifest the life you want. And that's why that's anything I could rewind the clock is that. Start from day I open my eyes and not let any fear come in.
And look, at the end of the day, you trusted yourself when you were 5. And then you, like everybody else, let yourself listen to all of the voices around you and then numbed yourself and got in your own way. And I'm just glad that selfishly for my own purposes and for this podcast, and because I will be calling you in the future, you went back to that little girl and you got out of her way.